Hello everyone, welcome back to Gran Turismo Story. Today we're going to be ranking every single car that's been added to Gran Turismo 7 since its launch back just over 2 years ago. Okay, so a few things before we start. Firstly, I know this video has been done already by Overtake GG. I didn't realise that after I'd started making the video, and also that video doesn't take into account the most recent cars that have been added in the June update, or May, whichever one it is. Secondly, I know there was a lot of comments on the last video talking about the audio. It should be fixed for this video, so just let's see. So we're going to be ranking these from S to D tier. Now S tier is going to be for the best of the best cars that have been added. A tier is for cars that are very good, but just not quite the best. B tier is for cars that, get some. C tier is for cars that generally aren't great, they're okay for occasionally using, but nothing very good. D tier is for cars that I'd say are kind of actively bad. Okay, so let's go in chronological order, starting with April, the first update, April 2022. That brought along the Subaru BRZ and the GT300 and the 300. I've got both of these in the C tier. They're not bad cars, but we already have a lot of these versions in the game. They're really just not needed. They don't really bring anything new to the game, except maybe like a new set of headlights, or you know what I mean. There's not really any reason why you'd use this car kind of over the other 4 versions in the game, so I don't really see why I would see it. However, the Cappuccino's a bit better. I remember I did use this car quite a bit for the K-Car challenge. I think it had a nice engine swap, you could tune up quite a bit, quite a nice car to kind of mess around with, and it did actually have some kind of practicality in the event, so I think this car is worthy of the B tier. Okay, so moving on to May 2022, that will be the Toyota GR10, the Suzuki Vision GT and the Roadster Rampage. So the Toyota GT010 or 010. Now, I didn't even realise this car was added once I made the video. I thought it had always been in the game because it had such little kind of presence. Once again, like the BRZ, I don't think it was a kind of bad car, but I don't really think it was anything special, so I think C tier for that one should be fine. P, on the other hand, I remember when this thing came out and I don't think it was the best, so yes, it's got all-wheel drive and has got 2 high booster engines, but let's not forget this is mixed in one group, and quite frankly 426 horsepower just isn't enough really. It's also relatively heavy, a lot heavier than you think it'd be, and while it does look pretty cool, it doesn't really have much use, and there are so many other, you could buy the Tomahawk or this for the same money, and it's just not a great car if I'm being honest, so I think this is our first D tier car. Now moving on to the Roadster Rampage. Now I occasionally see this car get put on Reddit for liveries or various other things. Now it takes kind of some old Pontiac Trans Am or whatever that car is and kind of modifies it. Gives it a nice new kind of V8 engine, if you will, a lot more horsepower to work with. And while I don't really use this car very much, I think it is still actually an alright car, so I think once again B tier for that one is justified. And moving on to June 2022, this is the Suzuki Vision GT, but a Group 3 version. Also the Suzuki Escudo, Suzuki's here, and the 1932 Ford Roadster. Okay, now this update was pretty good actually, the Suzuki Vision GT Group 3, so because it's in Group 3, it actually has a bit more use now, and I'm not sure it's the best Group 3 car, but at least there is some practicality as well as it looking cool. So I think it deserves to be bumped up a tier into the C tier. But now let's talk about the Escudo. Now this is one of the most iconic cars of the series, let's not lie now. Now I know the turbo lag and a couple other things cause races to do. Even more now the snow's been added, but all the road racing, all the dirt racing, the snow racing, gravel, such an iconic car to the series, obviously the fastest car in many of the GT games. And I think this deserves to be our first S tier car. And also the 1932 Ford Roadster, and this is quite a cool car. You get to drive this in the Master License, the final test of the A License, but also is quite modern in some other aspects. Very interesting car, quite cheap from the Legend dealership. Now I know like the Escudo it hasn't been coming around very much, I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, so moving on to July in 2022. This has the 1954 Maserati, I'll put the name on the screen, the Porsche 918 and the Skyline Super Silhouette. Now this was another really good update. Looking on the screen here, the June to August updates were bangers, for probably the best consecutive updates we've ever had. Yeah, the 1954 Maserati, I mean, I don't see it getting used too much, it's quite expensive, but it's not a bad car by any means. There's some competition in the games, you can get away with using it. There are some races, I probably won't use it very much, and it's probably going to sit in there as more of a collector's piece rather than a practical car you'd use, but once again it's not very... But yeah, it was nice, it kind of foreshadowed more Maseratis being added to the game, I suppose. Now the Porsche 918, I can't believe it's been nearly 2 years since this thing was added. Insane car, you know, Porsche are really good engineers, they make really good cars. And this was one of the iconic three for your McLaren people, the 918 and the LaFerrari. And this thing's insanely fast, there's no denying that. One of the fastest cars in the game, you know, straight line and around the track. You don't need an invitation to buy this car, which is actually pretty good, you know, I'd have thought it would have. And it is relatively cheap, to be fair, I think 1.6 million. The only reason why this isn't in the S tier is because it doesn't really have much significance to the game, partly because of the fact it's, you know, relatively new car. The Escudo is you know, quite old, so it's been in most of the games before. Had this car been in, you know, GT4, GT5, GT6, it would have been in the S tier, but I think the A tier is justified. Okay, and the Skyline Super Silhouette, like the Escudo, was one of the best cars in GT2. Really iconic race car. I know a lot of people love the Skyline, and especially the Super Silhouette. You know, kind of the only R30 and R31 representation of the Skyline game, forming the race car, really iconic to the series, and also Group 3, and I think it is one of the best Group 3 cars, so even then it's, you know, really good. I think there's no denying the fact that this car belongs in the S tier with the Suzuki Escudo. Okay, now moving into August, this is another banger of an update. We have the McLaren MP4-4. Now this is a really good car, there's no denying that, but there's kind of one elephant in the room in this car, and that's the fact we've already got the Gran Turismo and a version in the game, and I don't think there's a better car. They're both very good, but I just think if you can get the Gran Turismo one a lot easier, why is this one better? Yes, it's got the real life aspect, and it's got the iconic livery and all that stuff, driven by Senna, I think, but you have to complete all the master license to get this car, whereas the Gran Turismo one can be obtained by completing part of the mission series, of which I've done both, and I can kind of tell you the missions are a lot easier. So this isn't a bad car, but it is very expensive if you're not willing to obtain it, and if you are going to try and get it for free, it will be very difficult to obtain. Very fast car, probably the fastest 80s car in the game, maybe the fastest pre-2000s, I'm not sure. But yeah, I know a lot of people were excited for this car, and it, you know, very well justified. And I think the 8 is suitable for this car. Moving on to the Cayman GT4, now, you know, I quite like Porsche, I like a lot of their cars. I think this one's been overshadowed by the 918 and another car I'll mention later, but it's still quite a good car. It's a nice set of colours, the blue looks really nice, the yellow looks really nice, stuff like that. You know, built for the track. We do have the Cayman Group 4 as, well, obviously a Group 4 car, nice to see it added as a regular car. Occasionally I'll see it used, but not really, but it's fun to try on the Nürburgring every now and then. I do get some use out of it, and I think if the car doesn't really have much significance to the game, but it isn't a bad car, I think B tier is a place it should be. And the Pontiac GTO. Now I don't really see this car get talked about. I think they've added a lot of classic muscle cars, and this one just isn't really the best of the best. Occasionally I see it get used in muscle car events, and you know, there's no denying that you can make kind of moves in the campaign using this car, but it's probably not the go-to car that everyone wants to see added, so I think the C tier is fine. And now we're talking about the Di Tommaso Deal edition. Now, the first question I have was, why was this car in like the used dealership, Legends dealership, for like 5 or 6 months? I still don't really understand that. And because that's going to be in the D tier, there was no reason why this car was there. It was the exact same as the standard one, but they, got an advertisement, forced everyone, to view the advertisement, stop people from buying the used legend cars because this thing was hogging it. Yeah, I think D tier because this is probably the worst car that has been added in the whole game, if I'm being honest. Okay, now September 2022. Now this is going to be the Nissan Silvia. Now there's actually quite a few Nissan Silvias, but I think to save time, I'll just say they're all in the C or the B tier, whichever way you want to put them. None of them are bad cars. They all have some nice tunability and nice air upgrades and things like that. There is the Nissan Silvia event, which they can be used in, and many other races, FR Challenge, FF Challenge, that sort of thing, Turbo. But that I've found you can't tune them that much as you'd like to in terms of power. It's a bit of a letdown, and there are many better options. So I think C and B tier for all these Silvias is just fine. And this car is a very interesting one actually. That is the Volkswagen IDR. Now when this car launched, people thought it was going to be like the Narmane on steroids, got the Pikes Peak world record. People thought this car would eat up the Nürburgring. But the problem was, this car isn't really able to be used anywhere, so besides kind of time trials, this car gets no use. It's a million credits, so it's actually quite cheap, but then the problem is you can't really use it in online races or whatever, because the battery runs out too quickly, so this car was a massive disappointment. Now there's no denying it's fast, but I never see it used. To the point where, I was going to buy it when it came out, and I've since forgotten I was even going to buy it. I still don't even have it. So yeah, I think it's quite a fun car to drive around. Just be careful of that low top speed, obviously because of massive rear wing and electric. Yeah, fun car, but not practical at all. Get you, if I'm being honest, no use in the game. Just as a fun car to drive around. And if I'm looking here, the Cayman GT4 or the Ford 1932 Roadster will get you just as much fun, and that has more practicality. It's a lot cheaper, so I'm struggling to kind of place this car really high as much as I'd like to, but I think the B tier, should be fine for now. Then we have the Porsche Vision GT. Now, I don't like Vision GTs, I know a lot of the community doesn't, but there's no denying this is better than the Suzuki Vision GT. So this Porsche has over 1,000 horsepower, the Suzuki has 400, and these are going to be competing with each other. So I think, despite the Hayabusa being a fantastic engine, you've got over double the power, better engineers designing the car, it's just overall a better car. But it's still a Vision GT at the end of the day, so its use is limited, and there are much better Vision GTs in the Porsche. It's just that the Suzuki was so bad that even if the Porsche was a little bit better, it still may not be great. But it is alright, there are some cars I'd rather have it than, so I think C tier for the Porsche Vision GT is alright. Moving on to October 2022, first off with the Nismo Group 3. Now starting off with the Nismo Group 3, now I don't think this was anything special, like standard Nismo Skyline R35s. We have so many R35 variants in the game that kind of lost track. It wasn't anything special, so I think the C tier is justified. Now then the next car, I'm taking to my personal opinion a lot more, and that is going to be the Maserati Merak SS. It's quite an interesting car from 1980. Now I do actually quite like this car. I got a lot of use out of it in the campaign. Really cheap to buy. We've got some nice upgrades on it, some nice power, and I entered the historic Sports Car Cup, which I think was added at the same time. Basically flew past the competition with not even maxed out power for the thing. Really nice car, drives really well, sounds really good by the way, interior view's good. Maybe a bit of personal bias that I've used this car more than some of the others. If it was down to me, I'd probably put it in the A tier, but I know some people may just think it's a kind of outdated Maserati. I could take both sides into account, so I think B tier should be fine for this thing. Now, to end this update on a disappointing note, we have the Mazda MX-5 NA, I don't know the model. Let me just say this, we have too many MX-5s in the game, we don't need another one. I've never used this car, I don't think anybody else has. Most people can't even remember it being added, so that shows how significant it was. D tier. Okay, so moving on to November 2022, starting off with the BMW M2 competition. Now this car once again is not bad, but I think its use has been significantly reduced because of cars that have been added later. We'll get to them in a minute. Now, it's nice to have some BMW representation. I feel they're not very well represented in GT7, so it's nice to have this car. It's an alright car, stats are okay, but nothing special. I haven't really used it very much, but there are a lot of ways you could use this car if you wanted to. But there are better options you could use, and I think that would be down to personal opinion if you do like to use this car. Once again, not a bad car, but nothing special, so I think the C tier is fine. Okay, so now the Sierra RS500 that also came with it, and this car is actually really good. I really like this car. Kind of started that theme of, old classic touring cars. Done a video about this, talking about how to recreate the touring car back in the day, one of my first videos. Now, I really like messing around with this car. It had some, unique handling, which made it quite interesting. I like recreating classic touring car races with this thing, really fun. It had some really good liveries. Tunability was one of the best these classic cars tune, because you could put a turbo on it as well as getting it really highly powered, being naturally aspirated as well. They put some nice upgrades on this thing, and it was really fun to drive. It even boned stock. Not only was it quite cheap, but in the master license test you can drive this car, and it is really fun to drive. And yeah, I think cars like this is what the game needs, really brings, an extra bit to the game. So I think A tier is fine. Now, the other final car that came in this update, we're slowly seeing the quantity of cars in the update diminish, and that is a common theme throughout this. Is the Nissan Silvia K Aero, but I did speak about the Silvia earlier, so this is probably in the C tier. Now December, this was a really good update, December 2022. Starting off with the Alfa Romeo Giulia GTV. What a car this thing is. Some of the best paint jobs in the game, the green paint is lovely. The wheels on this thing are insane, the attention to detail, the handling is insane, it's got so much power yet it handles so well. Aerodynamic, can get around the track so fast, so quick in a straight line. Saloon, but it's got 5 seats, it's cheap to buy, it ticks so many boxes, this car. But it also has the two main things of, do I personally like it? Yes, I love this car. And is it good? Yes, it is very good. It's straight in the S tier. Down to personal opinion, probably the best car that's been added so far that I've talked about. Maybe not in terms of use, but definitely in personal opinion, and I know a lot of people do like this car. And the banger from this update was Bugatti Chiron. Now, I'm sure you all know the Bugatti Chiron, obviously the world's fastest car. Not much use for this car, I'm afraid. It was quite expensive as well, but obviously it's kind of a luxury Bentley, as I've heard some people call it. Insanely fast, no denying that, and I still get it used because it is like the ultimate kind of alpha car, if you will. I don't think it's good enough to be in the S tier, if I'm being honest. I think its speed alone doesn't mean it's one of the best, but it is still a really good car, and I think the A tier, and I think it fits well with the 918. Now, another car in this update was the Corvette C8. Now, this was, I know some people love this car, some people hate it. Mid-engine Corvette C8 series. Not as good as the C7 ZR1 that we have in the game, nowhere near, but for something with like 400 horsepower, it's surprisingly fast. I get quite a lot of use out of this car occasionally, and it's a very nice car to drive. I do quite like the C8 myself. Some people say it isn't a true Corvette, if you will, but there's no denying that the people really wanted this car in the game, and they got it. B2 is justified, really. Now, unfortunately, the Ferrari Vision GT came in this update, and let me just tell you, it wasn't great. It just handled like a boat, nothing special. Really brought down the tone of this update, which is a shame because it also had the Celica rally car, which is probably the best rally car that's been added besides the Escudo. Now, this thing had obviously the turbo, taking you from like 295 horsepower to like 700 and something stupid. Quite a really nice car to use, but also quite a funny kind of meme car. But yeah, nice to see some of the older rally cars from the series being brought back, and the Celica was one of the most iconic. A tier for sure. Had we have had the snow and a bit more kind of emphasis on rally racing in the campaign and the kind of events and stuff, I think it would have had enough use to be put in the S tier. But unfortunately, it just missed out going in the A tier. Now, I think it's important we look at how good this update was. We had the Giulia GTV from Alfa Romeo S tier, we had the Chiron in the A tier, the Corvette C8 in the B tier, the Celica in the A tier, and unfortunately the Ferrari in the D tier. Had the Ferrari not been added, I think besides the Spec 2 update a bit later, I think this would have been the best update in the game. It had some real good cars in it. Now, we didn't have any January 2023 update, but going into February, we start off with the Honda RA272, one of a classic 1960s or 1950s racer. This car's actually really good. It's really lightweight. It doesn't have much power, but the low weight makes up for it. Sounds really nice. It revs really high. Relatively cheap. Gets quite a lot of use out of it. Really fun car to drive as well. Really fuel efficient. really efficient on tyre wear as well. Some people like to recreate kind of old races with this thing. We don't really have anything like this in the game, and when you get something that's completely different that gets added to the game, it does definitely change things up a little bit. It makes a change from the BRZs and MX-5s that get added. So yeah, I think A tier is a solid choice for this thing. Then we had the 911 Carrera S, I think the first gen 911 or the second gen maybe, from the early 70s, and this was actually a really fun car to drive. This was before Porsche kind of worked out how to make use of their rear engine layout. So it does, oversteer or understeer quite a bit depending on the corner around the Nürburgring, but it's a handful to control, very fun car to drive, I do quite like it. It was relatively cheap when it came out, I think it is still quite cheap now. I personally like this car. I know some people aren't Porsche fans, I can see that, but it's a solid car that will get you some use, but it's not bad. Not a bad car, so I think the B tier once again is fine. Then we had the Citroen DS, one of the most innovative cars ever made. Now the hype for this thing was quite good, I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I rarely see it used because of the existence of the Renault R4, which has so much emphasis put upon it in these weekly challenges as needed every single week. And because they're both French and from 1970s and 80s, I don't really see this car getting used much. It's a bit slower than I thought it would be, but it's not a bad car by any means. You can get some use out of it, but you probably will have to tune it. So yeah, it's not really a bad car, but it's nothing great, so I think the C tier is fine. Then to finish it off, we have the Ital design weird car that was added. It had like an off-road and an on-road version. No idea what that was all about, but yeah, straight in the D tier for that one. Now starting on a high, in March 2023 we had the Porsche 959. Yet again, this is another banger. So I think Porsche always had the 911, but they had three kind of unique cars that have always been their kind of go-to supercars. They had the 959, the Carrera GT, and the 918. The 918 was added, the Carrera GT is ready in the game, I love that car. And nice to see the 959 getting added. Now this is actually a really good car, horsepower's quite low, but you wouldn't think about it. It's, it's heavy and it's old, yet it's still really fast. It's quite competitive. I personally just really like this car. I mean, you can get some use out of it. It's not going to be game changing. It may be quite expensive for some, I can understand that. But it's no denying it's a really iconic car, fast car in the world at one point. Solid A tier. It's a shame I don't really see it getting used very much anymore. Then we had the Mazda 3, nothing special here. It looks quite cool, looks quite fast, but yeah, nothing great, so straight in the C tier for that one. Then we had the Audi RS5 Turbo in Group 2. This was actually quite an interesting car in the sense that it wasn't Group 1 or Group 3, it was Group 2, and we don't really have a lot of those cars. We don't really have much new Audis and, V5s, Group 2. It's all, ticked a lot of niches that we don't really have in the game. 800,000 credits at stand. I did see a lot of people using this at the time, I still do. So I think in Polyphony's perspective, I think it's been a very successful car that's been added. Very nice car as well, solid A tier for that one. Now the final car from March is the Toyota Alphard van. I asked on Discord what people's favourite cars was, and this car came up a lot. Now, is it the fastest car that's been added? No. Is it the most useful? No, but it's very funny. Some of the liveries, like delivery vans, very cheap car to mess about with, very fun car, that kind of thing. It's proof that you don't necessarily need the fastest car or the best handling car to have fun in Gran Turismo. A tier for that one. Now, quite a disappointing update in April 2023, starting off with the Dallara. Isn't a bad car, but let's not forget we have the 2019 Super Formula, so this thing doesn't really have much use. I don't think its stats are any better than the existing one. If anything, I think they may be worse. Mid-engined inline 4 rear-wheel drive, so you can use this for the Formula GT, and it may be your fastest car if you're a beginner, but not much use other than that. Not a very interesting car, so I think D tier is fine. Also the AMG Group 3, I don't know why this wasn't in the game to begin with, but it wasn't nothing special for this car, straight in the C tier. However, we did have the Jaguar XJ220. Now I love this car, it has such a nice paint jobs that come with it, really nice sound, really unique car, such a fast car in a straight line, despite being from a V6. A bit bulky, quite a large car in terms of size or dimensions, and round the track you can feel its age and its size a little bit, but it's a very fun car to use. I love driving this thing. Really iconic to the series, and I think because of that I can, since it is my video, I'm saying this thing will be in the S tier. Some people may disagree with that and I can understand your point, but I personally think this car is in the S tier. Now the May update, we started off with the R32 Nismo. Now we had some Nismo cars before, this is the first time we saw Nismo as a separate brand. Another R32, so I know a lot of people like that. That was quite expensive, but the performance wasn't great. I mean, it wasn't bad either, you can get some use out of it, but just it was a start to get Nismo in the game. I don't think this was Nismo's showpiece, if you will, but it's not a bad car by any means. I think beat it is fine. Then we had the Alfa Romeo Giulia Sprint from 1967. This is quite a good car, get some use out of it, very nice handling car. I'll probably put it in the B tier. And then we have the Ford Maverick, which, you know, is similar to the Roadster Rampage in the sense that it's kind of an old muscle car that's been tuned up a bit. This one's not the best, it's got more power, but then it's just not very practical. They've almost tried to make the car as fast as possible without any emphasis on how it will turn. You know, 1,200 horsepower, you know, 900 foot-pounds of torque, 244 miles an hour. So it's a very fast car, there's no denying that, but you probably won't get any use out of it. Probably can't turn corners at all. So I think the C tier is fine. June was definitely an interesting update, very good update actually. The Lancer Evolution 3 to start off with. Now the 3rd gen Evo, very nice car. I made a video about this I think when it came out. Nice to see some of the older Evos in the game, we haven't really had them much before. Had some nice tunability, some nice liveries you can put on this thing and drive around, and yeah, just a very solid car in the A tier. Now as standard, whenever a new Evo gets added we get an Impreza with it, this time in 2004. The only one of this type of generation. Now I do really like this car actually, as well as the Evo. Had some nice paint jobs as standard, once again some nice tunability, nice liveries. I wouldn't put the Evo 3 and the Impreza together purely because of the kind of age difference, but they both now have a competitor. Makes the Evo versus Impreza kind of line up a bit more complete. You know, Evos and Impreza are always fun to mess around with, both of these solid cars going in the A tier. Now also in the A tier will be the Aston Martin Valkyrie, probably the fastest track car that's been added. Now I haven't ever used this thing, I must admit, but it does sound insane, there's no denying it's so fast around the track, so fast on a straight line, lightweight. You know, add some more reputation to Aston Martin. The only problem is the price is very expensive for beginners and, you know, people who don't have the time, like myself, to spend, you know, an hour a day grinding credits. I think it's a little bit unreasonable for most people to achieve, but it's still a very good car. And I think because the Super Silhouette and the X-Stages went to a bit cheaper, they made it was more accessible. And because of that, I think the Valkyrie only deserves to go in the A tier. But it is a very good car, so don't get me wrong on that one. Now, once again, we didn't have a July update, but going to August 2023, we start off with the Maserati MC20. More Maserati cars coming into the game. This car's fantastic, you know. May only have a V6, you know, smaller engine, but 620 horsepower is nothing to, you know, cry about. Very good handling car, very nice, quite a small car, but it does, you know, pack a punch, this thing. I really like this car actually, so I'm going to set it in the A tier. We also had the Corvette C1, a nice classic Corvette to be added into the game. I did get quite a lot of use out of this thing in kind of classic car championships, you know, things along those lines. It does wheel spin a lot, and it is, you know, the suspension is terrible if I'm being honest stock, but that does mean it's very fun. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, it's just a handful to control, which is quite fun. And yeah, I think, you know, classic Corvette, you can't really go wrong with that, so let's just say it's in the B tier. Now, a strange car is the Ambulance High Medic. This car is given out for free. I still don't know why they just brought an ambulance into the game and let everyone have it. I didn't know if it was related to some of the staff members that perhaps needed an ambulance or something like that. Still don't know, but I'm not complaining. I know online this is a very popular car as well. It's not going to be, you know, catching up to the Valkyrie and the Nominate on the track, but, you know, some very interesting, so there's that. So I don't really know where to put it if I'm being honest, but I think just B tier, I guess. Then the Toyota GR Corolla. Now, we already have the GR Yaris that does significantly lower the stocks in this car. It's a good car, there's no denying that, but like I said, it has a lot of competition. It doesn't really provide anything that means it's better than its competitors. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad car itself. It has its uses occasionally, and I think if you have it, don't necessarily think it's a bad car, but it's just probably nothing special, so I'd say the C tier. Okay, so in September 2023, we had a kind of month of Honda Civics review. Starting off with the 2021 Honda Civic, I think it is. Nothing special here, you know, quite a nice front engine, front wheel drive racer. I kind of do 550, 600 pp races. A couple of nice liveries on this thing. It does have quite a bit of power for a front wheel drive car. Bit of a handful. A nice car to drive, relatively fast, nothing special though, and unless you personally like this car, then I think it's useful means in the B tier for me. Now we have the Mazda 3 with the Group 4 edition. Nothing special with this thing. Yeah, nothing special with this thing, just kind of a Group 4 variant of the already mentioned Mazda 3. Okay if you like this car, if not you probably won't get much use out of it, unless you're into Group 4 racing of course, probably in this C tier. Then we have the Garage RCR Civic, kind of a tuned version of the 1991 generation. Quite a nice car, slightly expensive, but it does have a nice sound, nice handling car, solid car. Doesn't get much use, but it's quite a fun car to drive around. Beat it for sure. Then November is probably the best update we've ever had for this game, the Spec 2 update. Master license test, we had loads of new cars, I think a new track. Menus, extra menus, photo mode updates, that's why it's called the Spec 2 update. For being honest, that was probably the peak of the game, and now we're only seeing the end off while they work on GT8. Nevertheless, let's get into this. Starting off with a bang right from the start, the Dodge Demon. Now this immediately gains points for me and everyone else who likes this car, which is good, and is probably going to need it since its usability and practicality is significantly reduced. A load of people thought if they can put 1000 horsepower in this car, it will do 700 miles an hour. Unfortunately, aerodynamic exists and this car's just a brick, so even when this thing had like 1400 horsepower, it would still struggle to do like 270. And unfortunately, because it had no drag tires, it didn't accelerate very quick either. So yeah, it wasn't as fast as people were expecting. Stock it was quite fast, but it didn't handle very well either. So I think the main point this car is going to get is the fact that people like it really. And I think A tier is solid for this thing. Then we have the 426 Hemi. Now I don't see anybody using this car, I think it is alright. I don't really know much about it if I'm being honest, tell me in the comments if I've missed anything out about it, but in the B tier. Now I know another popular fan favourite like the Demon, except this car actually has some use, the Lexus LFA, probably the best sounding car ever made, definitely in this game. V10, I know I've spoken about this car before, it's on the thumbnail of one of my videos for goodness sake. Really popular in the game, you know, you can drive this, you can win it, you can buy it. Now it wasn't built to be the fastest car, which is probably why it won't get you the most use, but there's no denying how fun this thing is with the sound, it's just insane. S tier for sure. The Benz 190E, this was definitely kind of made better by the fact the Sierra's in the game, we can kind of complete that touring car collection. Before we kind of had the BMW, we had the Sierra then added, we then had the, before we only had the BMW, and we had one other car which I've forgotten and really annoying me, I'll put it on the screen right now. Then obviously we had the Sierra, which kind of made it a bit better, and then it was completed with the 190E. I really do like the 190E, it's a personal favourite of mine. Get quite a lot of use out of this thing, can be tuned quite nicely as well, but also stock is a very nice car. The thing is, while it may not be everyone's favourite car, I know a lot of people generally do quite like it, and also gets points for usability. Part of me could see this car being in the A tier, but I think if the Sierra's in the A tier, I think let's put them both together. And the A tier is a solid area for this car. Nismo 400R, now this may have disappointed some people, because it's quite expensive at 1.8 million when it first launched. Obviously quite iconic, you know, the yellow livery, really important to the GT series. Now I've done a tune for this car way back in the day, ironically once I did the Sierra. Now the thing is, 400 horsepower now isn't very special, we've got to remember back then in like a 4 or 5 seater, that was a lot of power. So naturally over time this car has essentially got worse, if you will, not worse, but everything else has got better, which essentially made it worse. But I think the A tier should stay there. Now probably my favourite car that's been added, personal opinion, the Porsche 911 GT3 RS, straight up S tier. Okay, so I love this car, looks really good. No denying that, but its performance is insane. Probably like best handling car I've ever driven, including like Group 3 and Group 4 cars. It handles better than them. Just insane. You wouldn't even believe this rear engine. You know, the handling is just insane, even on like sport tyres, for goodness sake. Top speed isn't the best, but it's not bad. Acceleration is pretty good. Handling, like I mentioned, is insane. Quite a light car as well. Really like it in the S tier. I'd definitely recommend for beginners. Please get this car, it will win you so many races, you can do so many things with this thing. It will be your fastest track car for ages, you know, it will outpace Group 3 cars, sometimes Group 4 easily. And yes, it's overall a really nice car. Finishing off this update with the Tesla Model 3, now this car's really cheap. think it's quite fast. Obviously it's an electric car, so you're not really going to get any usability. It's just a fun car to drive around every now and then. Support Elon Musk while you can, I guess. But yeah, let's have a look at this update. You had the Demon in the A tier, you had the 426 Hemi in the B tier, LFA in the S tier, Benz in the A tier, 400R in the A tier, the GT3 RS in the S tier, and the Model S in the B tier, as I mentioned now. Every single car ranged from the B to the S tier. What an update this thing was. No December update, understandably, and we didn't have an October update because they're preparing for this, and I believe it was well worth the wait. However, it then gets worse from there, starting off in January this year, 2024. With a very disappointing update. Suzuki Jimny. I know some people kind of like this car. I've never really used it. It was cheap, there's no denying that. But is it good? That's a bit debatable. The game can make you use it, but that doesn't mean you like it. You know, you can lead a horse to a river, but you can't make it drink type thing. C tier for this car. I could see some people saying D or B tier, but I think C. Then we had two depressing Vision GTs in the Genesis and the Bulgari. I know the Genesis handled like a boat. I don't know about the Bulgari. Interesting colour choice, but nothing special. Both of these straight in D tier. February update was okay. We have the Lancer Evo 9. I know quite a lot of people, including myself, like this car. Yes, another Revo, which is nice. The generation is quite a popular one. And we had the Evo 10 in the game, so the 9 isn't too much of a change, but it's enough that people like it. I've used this thing quite a bit, and a lot of other people have. Quite a popular car. So yeah, I think A tier for that one is good. Then we had the Renault 4, kind of overshadowed the Citroen DS. Now it's maybe slow and it may, not have much power and much going for it, but it can be tuned quite a bit, and the game's put so much emphasis on this car that to really get anywhere, you kind of have to use this thing. It's a very interesting car. It looks like a 60s car, but you wouldn't believe it's from the mid-80s, but there we go. Solid B tier for that one. The TTS 09 Audi TT, second generation. I've used this thing a couple of times and forgot it even existed. C tier for this thing. They had a bit of potential with this, but it just didn't really work. They introduced a tourist trophy, and I thought they were going to go down the road of introducing kind of older race kind of series from older GT games, getting new older cars involved that haven't been used very much. They didn't like that approach very much. They thought they'd prefer Renault 4 races. So the TT didn't really get used very much, but it's not a bad car, you can get some use out of it. But I just think the GTV, the Alfa Romeo GTV, is such a better car that you should all have, and even the 911 GT3 RS. So yeah, overall an okay update. The March update was actually very good, let's no denying that from this year. Starting off with the Audi R8 V10 from 2016, I think it was. Now, we haven't really had any new Audi R8s, we're stuck with that 4.2 V8 from 2006, 2007. Nice to have a new one in, get some use out of it. It's still a bit old, but yeah, it's a step in the right direction, I guess. I could see between A and B tier. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt once at A tier. Now the Lamborghini Urus, that is a very good car. Four-wheel drive, I know you can get a lot of use out of that thing on the road as well. I know a lot of people like this. Yeah, and I've used this thing quite a bit. I do really like it. It's actually relatively cheap. And I'd encourage all of you lot to buy this thing, actually. Pretty good. I could see this car being in the S tier, actually, but I think let's keep it in the A tier for now. But one definite S tier from this update is a Toyota GT1. What a machine this thing is. So iconic to the series. Its stats may be a bit disappointing. Some people may have thought, should have 700 or 800 horsepower, whatever, but no, it doesn't. Only like early 700s. It's still not bad, considering it's a race car. To hit 220 miles an hour is still pretty good. This thing is Group 2. Let's not forget this. People are comparing this thing with the 787B, and it's different classes of racing. But yes, it's a very iconic car to the series, there's no denying that. Relatively cheap. All we need now is the R390 race car to come back, then we've completed it with the Mercedes and a couple others. I love this car, so good, sounds really good. Looks really good in my opinion as well, so iconic, gets a lot of people back. S tier. Now in the second to last update we've had the Afeela, which is I think an AI kind of Sony Gran Turismo kind of collab. Definitely a very interesting car, given out for free, and I know some people have actually had some success using this thing. 400 horsepower standard, but then you've got to remember it's very heavy as well because it's electric. Once again, another one of these interesting cars, like the Alphard and that, which proves you don't have to have the fastest car to have fun in this game. B tier, I think, for this one. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS, nothing special with this thing. Once again, tell me if I've missed anything, but I think classic muscle cars and don't do anything with them. And the problem is, unless you're a muscle car, you don't really know what's good or bad in relation to. I'll just put them all in the B tier. However, a depressing one is the Skoda Vision GT. Now, I'm not going to lie with Skoda. I thought we could have had, Skoda rally cars, race cars and all sorts, but they implement this heavy boat-like Vision GT that costs so much. just ruined the whole thing. I hope there's more Skodas coming, I really do, but I doubt it. It was a very bad month. I know this disappointed a lot of people, this update, because of the limited Skoda. And the Skoda Vision GT in particular is going to be in the D tier, along with all most of the other Vision GTs, like the Suzuki, the Ferrari, the Ital Design, the Genesis, and the Bulgari. They're all in there. Now, May update, which wasn't featured in the other video, the final update that we've had so far as of the time of making this video. Castrol NSX, and this thing's going to be in the S tier, and a really iconic cars in the series. You'll get a lot of use out of this thing. I know you can maybe even compete it with the Penzor Nismo. Going to go hand in hand a bit. Obviously the green and red paint job, I think this is a slightly younger version than the one we previously had, but it's a very good car nonetheless. Yeah, in the S tier, no doubt it's going to be pretty quick. Going to handle quite well, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive of course. Then we have the Volvo 240 wagon. Now I know how this thing is going to be drifting it. Very fun car in the game, probably not the best on this thing, but nothing too special. Then we have the Skyline GTSR, the variant. Unfortunately, the Super Silhouette was a lot better than this car, and it came earlier, so it kind of took away a lot of the spotlight. I haven't played since this update, that's what people have been saying, that kind of thing, Discord. So I think this car isn't bad. It has a bit of tuning potential, but I think there are so many Skylines in the game at this point, and even older ones now with the 2000 GT. This car has limited use, but still a good car nonetheless. I'm going to put it for sure. Finally ending it off with the final car I've had. This is the Civic SIL11. I don't really know what it is, but the Civic we had before. Now this is what the RCR Civic was based on. A very good car, very popular car. A lot of tunability in this thing. Another one of these kind of Japanese small engined kind of turbocharged with natural aspect or whatever cars that get a bit of tunability. Insane. Is it iconic to the series? Yes, kind of, but like the ultimate car that everyone wants to get more is in the car that everyone is forced to have. If you're a bit like the pink Yaris, I guess. But yeah, B tier for this one. So overall, May was actually quite a good update. We had 5 cars. We haven't seen that since a long time. September last year, so nearly a year. Some decent cars in here. The Castrol NSX, Volvo 240, just to name a few. Okay, so this video has actually been so long in the making that actually 2 months have passed, that being June and July. Unfortunately, there wasn't an update for June, but for July there is quite a big update, so I thought I'd kind of do this little section on the end and just add that in. One of my fears with this video is that more updates are coming along and it seems to be updated. Okay, so enough about the track. I know it is quite a good update and there's quite a lot to talk about, but ultimately we are talking about the cars here. So like I mentioned earlier, the June update from this year was quite disappointing. No cars, or no update at all for that matter. A more generous update for July, like Subaru Impreza, probably 22B rally car. Now we don't have, obviously since they're not in the game yet, we don't have the information about them. But, you know, we'll just be guessing for now. So this car looks to be a good competitor to the Celica that was added, I think probably about a year and a half ago now. I'm guessing around 295 horsepower four-wheel drive. Then you can never put a turbo on, I'm guessing, and get this thing up to around 500, 600 horsepower. So this looks better than the Celica. It's more iconic. The Celica was still very iconic, and I'm guessing it'd be a very good car, but you know, since there's not much emphasis on rally and it's got a direct competitor which may be just as good if not better, I think we'll have to put this between the A and the B tier for now. Yeah, let's go with the B tier. Then we have the Ferrari F430 Scuderia. Now this is obviously similar to the standard F430s in the game, just as kind of a more race variant. Has this cool strap as well. I don't really know too much about this car, whether it's got much power upgrades, whether it's no power and better aero or something. So we're kind of running blind a little bit with that one. But the F430 was always a pretty good car anyway, really nice gearbox on that thing. A bottom of the range Ferrari, but still a really nice car. This one will likely be slightly more expensive, but a bit better, so I'm tempted to put this thing in the A tier, but I think for the B tier for now should be fine. Then we have this classic, I don't know the variant, but I think that is the one before the E46, E41, E39, one of them two. Yeah, no, a lot of people will be hyped for this one. BMW is very popular. Now this only looks to be a two-door one, so yeah, it's going to likely have around 300 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, front engine as standard. By itself, probably not amazing, I'd have thought, but it'll be like the Sierra and the Mercedes Cosworth that are added. Yeah, this roof 4.2 RGT. Now, once again, we don't know anything about this. Gran Turismo Wiki says it has around 517 horsepower. I remember from the earlier games from 2000. Inevitably going to be a nice car, but if I'm being honest, despite being a roof, a tuned Porsche, I think if it's got the exact same horsepower as the 911 GT3 RS, what was that, the GT2? Despite having the same horsepower as the GT3 RS, I think the GT3 RS will run rings around this car, unfortunately. So I'm not going to say it's going to be a bad car, but I think it's a lot heavier than the GT3 RS. It's not going to handle as well. Same pass, I don't think it'll be all that useful. Once again, we'll have to wait and see. I'm predicting that this will be in the C tier, but I hope that it gets some use, so I'll be optimistic and say B tier. Yeah, there's no information known about this car, power or weight or anything, so we're just going to be judging it based off what it will be like. So if we think about this kind of logically, usually they're the standard division GT cars, then they get put into a class. When they do that, the Bugatti Veyron and the Suzuki, all on top of my head, the class version of the car is usually worse than the standard division GT. Bearing in mind this one will likely be the class one, I've got a feeling this car won't be very good. I hope it handles amazingly and is very useful, but I can't see that. And honestly, I think I could put it in the D, but I think we'll go with C tier for now. And so my favourite one out of these two last, the Lamborghini Gallardo. A beautiful car there. Obviously adding to the Lamborghini collection. The Gallardo is a classic car that I know a lot of you lot own. 2008, I believe this one is. 5.2 litre V10 shared with the Audi R8, which is this one's obviously a Lamborghini. Looks really good, sounds really good, going to be powerful. I think the Huracan will be better, but this thing is, the OG. Really nice car to work with, tune it up, leave it standard, it will still be competitive, no doubt in that. So yeah, I'm going to stick this thing in the A tier, I think that's where it should be. I could see the BMW moving up to A tier, honestly I could, and this Ferrari or the Impreza or any of these cars, they've all got potential, but the thing is, because I don't really know much about them, and the update's going to be coming out in 10 days, so I didn't really want to wait. But I could definitely see some of these cars being very good. The one which I think will disappoint the most will be that roof. I think a lot of people put that up to the standard Porsches, even the 2016 GT3 RS, and I think people would be disappointed in that one if I'm being honest.